Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health. And really, without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
You're listening to the sweet, sensual, serendipitous, and soulful sounds of Nerdery and Murdery.
God, I hate you so much.
Okay, so for this episode of Nerdery and Murdery, by the way, I'm Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery.
One of our listeners thought that our show was Nerdery and Birdery, so I wanted to give a little bit of information on Birdery real quick.
Oh, no. Are we actually doing an episode on birds?
It's just a little quick thing.
Well, then I guess welcome to episode 65 of Nerdery and Birdery.
Yes, Nerdery and Birdery.
All right, take it away, Zig.
Okay, so the red-tailed hawk is a bird of prey that breeds throughout most of North America, from the interior of Alaska and northern Canada and as far south as Panama and the West Indies. It's one of the most common members of the genus Buteo in North America or worldwide. The red-tailed hawk is one of 3 species colloquially known in the United States as the chicken hawk, though it rarely preys on standard-sized chickens. The bird is sometimes referred to as the red tail for short when the meaning is clear in context. Red-tailed hawks can acclimate to all the biomes within their range, occurring on the edges of non-ideal habitats such as dense forests and sandy deserts.
Okay,
the red-tailed hawk.
No. I can't take an episode on birds. I can't do it. I just can't. I can't.
That was basically it.
Yeah, because I can't.
I've got another nerdery lined up.
Oh, thank God.
We're going to talk about Intellivision. but I wanted to get that bit out for the red tail hawk.
Oh, thank God. Yes, please take over with the real nerdery.
Today we're going to talk about Intellivision.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So
we did Atari for an exclusive.
Yes. Well, we did Atari as a company. I may end up talking about the 2600 and the 5200 later on as well. But yeah, I wanted to talk about the Intellivision because at the time of this recording, they're supposed to be coming out with a new Intellivision.
Oh, that's cool.
There is some problems with the company, so by the time this airs, it may not have been out, or it may actually be out. But the Intellivision is a home video game console released by Mattel Electronics in 1979. The name is a portmanteau of intelligent television. Development began in 1977, the same year as the launch of its main competitor, the Atari 2600, or the original Atari video computer system, which is VCS. In 1984, Mattel sold its video game assets to former Mattel Electronics executive investors, eventually becoming the INTV Corporation. Game development ran from 1978 to 1990 when the Intellivision was discontinued. From 1980 to 1983, more than 3 million consoles were sold. In 2009, IGN ranked the Intellivision number 14 of the greatest video game consoles of all time. It remains Mattel's only video game console until the Hyperscan in 2006. Basically, what that means is you could buy an Intellivision up until 1990.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've got pictures of them and things to show that, yeah, you could still buy them. They were hard to come by, but you could get them. The Intellivision was developed at Mattel in Hawthorne, California, along with the Mattel Electronics line of handheld electronic games, like the little football game that everybody was so happy with. Mattel's design and development group began to investigate a home video game system in 1977, again when 2600 was released for that Christmas. It was to have rich graphics and long-lasting gameplay to distinguish itself from its competitors. Mattel identified a new but expensive chipset from National Semiconductors and negotiated better pricing for a simpler design. Its consultant APH Technological Consulting suggested a General Instrument chip listed as the Gemini, programmable set in the GI 1977 catalog. The GI chipset lacked reprogrammable graphics, and Mattel worked with GI to implement changes. GI published an updated chipset in its 1978 catalog. After having chosen National in August of 1977, Mattel waited for 2 months before ultimately choosing the proposed GI chipset in late 1977. A team at Mattel headed by David Chandler began engineering the hardware, including the hand controllers. In 1978, David Rolfe of APH developed an onboard executive control software named Exec, and with a group of Caltech summer students, employees programmed the first games. Graphics were designed by a group of artists at Mattel led by Dave James.
And Intellivision was a direct competitor to Atari.
Yes, it was. Well, and like the ColecoVision was supposed to be a direct competition to Intellivision, but it ended up becoming a direct competition to the Atari 5200.
Right.
And we'll talk about ColecoVision in a later date, because I really want to talk about a lot of these consoles. Because a lot of them, unlike today, they have long lives.
Right.
There are still televisions out there from the late 70s to the early 80s that are still running and people are still using. It was introduced in the 1979 Las Vegas CES Consumer Electronics Show in January as a modular home computer with the master component priced at $165 and soon to follow keyboard component also at $165, which in 2021 money is $620.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how expensive these were in the 70s.
Yeah. But a lot of people bought them. And, the prices did come down. Plus, inflation went up in the early 80s. Matter of fact, the current inflation we're seeing now is equivalent to what happened in the early 80s.
Yeah.
So even though the unit itself didn't come down, the money that it was worth was less, so it was cheaper for people to buy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, at the Chicago CES in June, prices were revised to $250 for each component, and a shortage of key chips from manufacturer General Instruments, resulting in a limited number of Intellivision master components produced that year in the fall of 1979. Sylvania marketed its own branded Intellivision at $280 in its GTE stores at Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. On December 3rd, Mattel delivered consoles to the Gottschalk's department store chain headquarters in Fresno, California, with a suggested retail price of $275. The Intellivision was also listed in the nationally distributed J.C. Penney Christmas 1979 catalog. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember sitting down with that and just looking at it. It came with 7 cartridges. It was in stores nationwide by mid-1980 with pack-and-game, Las Vegas Poker, and Blackjack, and a library of 10 cartridges. Mattel Electronics became a subsidiary in 1981. So originally the idea was they were going to do you had your television, the box is, roughly about a little over, what would you say, 1.5 feet, 18 inches across?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. It would set down into a device with a tape deck and a keyboard in the front of it. And it basically just set down in a little hole in the middle of it. And that was going to be the computer. Intellivision never released that. I do have some pictures of it, of what it's supposed to look like. They did eventually release a keyboard attachment that turned it into a computer, but it wasn't nearly what they thought they were going to do. I think if they'd have done what they thought they were going to do, they would have had a hit, as opposed to ColecoVision's Atom, which was poorly designed. The Intellivision is not the first system to challenge Warner Communications' Atari. It is the first to have posed a serious threat to its market lead. A series of advertisements starring George Plimpton used side-by-side game comparisons to demonstrate the superior graphics and sound of a television over the Atari 2600. The Intellivision was designed a couple of years later. That's all it was. It was Moore's Law. Even though the Atari was released in 77, they developed it over 75 and 76, whereas Intellivision didn't release theirs until 79. They started in 77, so they had better chips.
Right.
They also depicted the superior sound of Intellivision over the Atari 2600. One slogan called Intellivision the closest thing to the real thing. One example compares golf games where the other consoles game have a blip sound and cruder graphics, where the Intellivision features a realistic swing sound and strike of the ball and a more 3D look. I did include some of the George Plimpton advertisements, a YouTube link on our website. The quality of the first couple of videos in the system, or in that YouTube link, because basically it's just all of them, or a large sampling of them, are not great. Once you get past to the third one, they look fine. But there is a little bit of fuzz. I think what it was is they recorded the YouTube off of a VCR recording.
I'm sure. And that's so funny. The closest thing to the real thing, just thinking about the graphics back then versus the graphics now.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy. Yeah. It's like stick figures. Right. But it was better than the 2600.
Right.
So in its first year, Mattel sold out its initial 175,000 production run of the Intellivision master components. In 81, more than 1 million Intellivision consoles were sold, 5 times as many as they sold in 1980. The Intellivision master component was branded and distributed by various companies before Mattel shifted manufacturing to Hong Kong. Mattel Intellivision consoles were manufactured by GTE Sylvania, The GTE, Sylvania, and Intellivision consoles were produced along with Mattel's, differing only by the brand name. Sears produced one called the Super Video Arcade, which was really, really cool. I kind of like the way the Sears one looks. I think I've got a picture of it. If not, I'll make sure I get one. They were all manufactured by Mattel in Hong Kong. Has a restyled beige top cover and detachable controllers. Its default title screen lacks the Mattel electronics captioning. In 1982, Radio Shack marketed the Tandyvision 1, similar to the original console, but with gold plates replacing the more wood trim. In Japan, the television consoles were branded by Bandai in 82. In Brazil, there were Digimed and Digiplay consoles manufactured by Sharp in 83. So inside every Intellivision console is a 4K of ROM containing the exec software. It provides two benefits: reusable code that can effectively make a 4K cartridge an 8K game, and a software framework for new programmers to develop games more easily and quickly. It also allowed other programmers to more easily review and continue other projects for add-ons for the Intellivision under the supervisor of David Rolfe at APH. And with graphics from Mattel artist Dave James, APH was able to quickly create the Intellivision launch game library using mostly summer students, guys from MIT and Caltech. The drawback is that to be flexible and handle many different types of games, the exec runs less efficiently than a dedicated program, which is fine. I mean, honestly, you don't really need the exec to do more than what they had it doing. Intellivision games that leverage the exec run it at 20 hertz frame rate instead of the 60 hertz frame rate for which the Intellivision was designed. But using the exec framework is optional, but almost all Intellivision games released by Mattel Electronics use it and thus run at 20 hertz. The limited ROM space in the early years of a Intellivision game release also meant that there is no space for a computer player. So many of the early multiplayer games required 2 human players. Initially, all Intellivision games were programmed by an outside firm, APH Technological Consulting, with 19 cartridges produced before Christmas of 1980. So they released it in 79 in a small run. They geared up for the 1980 Christmas season, and they had 19 games to go with it. So I had a friend who had one, and he really loved it.
Yeah, I knew people who had one of these too, and it was fun.
Yeah. I kind of liked it. Not crazy about I like the design of the controller, but I didn't like the disc. It didn't seem as
responsive.
Yeah. And I think once you actually got to using it, it was a little easier. But it's one of those things that you just have to play it for a while. Whereas the Atari's joystick was way more intuitive.
Right.
Mattel did develop its own software group, and they began hiring programmers. The original 5 members of that Intellivision team were Mike Minkoff, Rick Levine, John Soule, and Don Daglow, and manager Gabriel Baum. Levine and Minkoff, longtime Mattel Toys veterans, both transferred from the handheld Mattel game engineering team. They're the guys that gave you the football game.
Right.
So love those guys. During 1981, Mattel hired programmers as fast as possible. But early in 82, Mattel Electronics relocated from Mattel headquarters to an unseen industrial building. Offices were renovated and a new staff moved in. To keep these programmers from being hired away by rival Atari, their identities and work locations were kept a closely guarded secret. They were afraid Atari was going to pilch their guys.
That's funny.
The programmers are referred to collectively as the Blue Sky Rangers. The only problem is some of the Blue Sky Rangers and some of the programmers from Atari decided they didn't like the way the Mattel or Atari were treating them, so they helped to form iMagic and Activision.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You had told me that.
Yeah, it wasn't just guys from Atari. It was also guys from Mattel. Cheshire Engineering was formed by a few senior APH programmers, including David Rolfe. The most popular Intellivision games was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and they had a second Advanced Dungeons and Dragons game. I have included some pictures of some box art and some other things. Their D&D game was the best thing on the market at the time.
Oh, vastly superior to the Atari one.
Yeah.
Well, which was just what was just called. What was the Atari one? It wasn't Dungeons and Dragons. It was just.
I think it was just
Dungeon.
I think it was just called Dungeon.
Adventure. It was called Adventure. It was just called Adventure.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible. You had to go around to find a key, and then you found the key and unlocked something. And
right.
But yeah, the Dungeons, both those Dungeons and Dragon games, and I have the box art and some of the stills listed already because they're quite beautiful. Daglow also went on to create Utopia, a precursor to the sim genre, and Eddie Dombrower, the groundbreaking sports simulator World Series Major League Baseball. Daglow was also involved in the popular television games Tron Deadly Discs, which was on Intellivision, not on Atari, and Shark Shark. After Mattel Electronics closed in '84, its programmers continued to make significant contributions to the video game industry. Don Daglow and Eddie Dumbrow went on to Electronic Arts to create Earl Weaver Baseball, and Don Daglow founded Stormfront Studios. Bill Fisher, Steve Ronnie, and Mike Breen founded Quicksilver Software, and David Warhol founded Real Time Associates. All of these became major players later on. The Intellivision was designed as a modular home computer. As I said before, you were supposed to take the television and slap it down into this computer terminal, and it was going to run your system. The master component was packaged as a standalone video game system, so you could add it into the keyboard component. But they never got that big unit off the ground. They did eventually add the keyboard component add-on. It had an 8-bit 6502 processor, making the Intellivision a dual processor computer. It had 16K 10-bit shared RAM. I don't even think you could start a computer with that little. I think you won't even boot up.
Not anymore, no.
Yeah, the executive, both Intellivision CP1610 and 6502 program code from a tape. Which is a large amount, as typical contemporary cartridges were only 4K. The cassette had 2 tracks of digital data and 2 tracks of analog audio, completely controlled by the computer. The 2 tracks are read-only for the software, and the 2 tracks for the user data. The tape drive is block address with high-speed indexing. The high-resolution 40 by 24 monochrome text display can overlay regular Intellivision graphics. There is a microphone port and 2 expansion ports for peripherals and RAM. The Microsoft Basic programming cartridge used one of the ports and expanded memory. You could add these 2 cartridges to get you 8K each, so you could get up to 32K eventually if you had that thing all kitted out. But it looks like a Frankenstein because it's got things sticking up all over it. It uses the Intellivision's power supply. A 40-column thermal printer was available, as well as a telephone modem was planned, along with voice synthesis and voice recognition. I think they released the voice synthesizer and the modem. They didn't really. They were closed by the time they really got production up. So you can find them, I believe, but they're really rare because, they started selling them. And then a few months later, they closed their doors. So, and INTV didn't want to deal with the computer. The INTV company that was spun off, they just wanted to deal with Intellivision stuff and licensing for Brazil and Japan and Hong Kong. Keyboard component was an ambitious piece of engineering for its time. That's the one that the Intellivision fit down inside.
Sure.
It was repeatedly delayed, and the engineers tried to reduce manufacturing costs. In August of '79, the Intellivision keyboard component in its breadbox form was successfully entered into the Sears market research program. But in December of '79, Mattel had produced design and working units, but decided on a significant internal change. So the keyboard components' repeated delays became so notorious about Mattel headquarters that comedian Jay Leno, then performing at Mattel's 1981 Christmas party, got his biggest response of the evening with the line, "You know what the 3 big lies are, don't you? The check is in the mail. I'll still respect you in the morning, and the keyboard will be out in the spring." But there are a lot of complaints about that. Eventually, Intellivision caught the attention of the Federal Trade Commission, who started investigating Mattel Electronics for fraud and false advertising in mid-'82. The FTC ordered Mattel to pay a monthly fine, said to be $10,000, until the promised computer upgrade was in full retail distribution. To end the ongoing fines, the keyboard component was officially canceled in August 1982, and the entertainment computer system module offered in its place. That's the one that plugs in. Part of the Mattel settlement with FTC involved offering to buy back all the existing keyboard components for customers, where they basically paid almost like a Kickstarter, but had never received them. Mattel provided a full refund, but customers without a receipt received $550 for the keyboard component and $60 for the basic cartridge and $30 for each cassette software. Any customer who opted to keep their products was required to sign a waiver with the understanding that no more software would be written for the system, and absolved Mattel for further responsibilities for technological support. They were also compensated with $1,000 worth of Mattel Electronics products. So how this boiled down was, if you put your money down and pre-ordered this computer unit and you didn't get it, you pre-ordered the computer unit, but you could go out and buy a couple of pieces of hardware. They would give you your money back, and you'd send back the hardware. They would give you your money back for pre-ordering computer components, but you could keep the hardware, and they'd give you basically coupons for other Mattel electronics.
Right.
The thing is, this stuff is so rare now that the best financial sense, assuming you had a crystal ball, would have been to keep that ROM cartridge and a couple of the other pieces and sell them now, because they're hen's teeth.
Mm-hmm.
They're unicorns. You don't see them, but they are out there. Well, I guess unicorns aren't really out there, but approximately 4,000 keyboard components were manufactured. It's not clear how many of them were sold, as they are as rare as well. The keyboard component debacle was ranked as number 11 in GameSpy's 25 dumbest moments in gaming. So in mid-'81, Mattel's upper management was becoming concerned about the keyboard component. So they started to shut down some of the ideas that were coming out. They did introduce in '82 the Intellivision voice synthesizer module, a speech synthesizer for compatible cartridges. It kind of plugged onto the side. I've got a picture of one of those. Like the Intellivision chipset, the IntelliVoice chipset was developed by General Instruments with an Orator chip with 2K of ROM inside it. Now, in spring of '83, Mattel introduced the Intellivision 2. It was a cheaper, more compact redesign of the original, and it was designed to be less expensive to manufacture and service with updating styling. It no longer had the controller cords built in. You could actually unplug them. They went in the same spot, but they had plugs in them, so you could plug them in and plug them out. So if your controller went bad on an original Intellivision, you had to go in and have it replaced. Whereas if your controller went bad on an Intellivision 2, you unplugged it and replaced it with another one. They sold real well in Brazil. I'd like to talk about some of the other ideas that Intellivision had. So as early as '81, Intellivision was designing 2 new systems. They were designing the Intellivision 3 and the Intellivision 4. So Dave Chandler's group began designing what would have been Mattel's next generation console, codenamed Decade. That was the 4. It would have been based on a 32-bit MC68000 processor and a 16-bit custom design advanced graphic interface chip. So what this would have been between a 16 and a 32-bit system.
Wow.
This never got out of the planning stages. Nothing was ever built for the Intellivision 4. No hardware was ever designed or anything else. It was intended the machine could lead Mattel's electronics into the 1990s. However, on August 4th, 1983, most of the hardware people at Mattel Electronics were laid off. Now, in 82, they also started working on the Intellivision 3. And the new machine introduced by competitors, Mattel marketing wanted to bring an upgraded system to the market sooner. So the Intellivision 3 was to be upgraded but backwards compatible. So you'd be able to play your old consoles on it, or your old cartridges on this console.
Mm-hmm, right.
But it was based on similar CP1610 processor with an improved graphics stick chip producing double the resolution with more sprites and colors. The Intellivision 3 never proceeded past the prototype stage, but there are prototypes out there. Mattel document titled Target Specific Specifications for Intellivision 3 had the following. The aforementioned 16-bit data bus of that CP1610 processor. Multiple date addresses mode for backwards compatibility with existing cartridges. The graphic stick, 1B tile graphics, 20 cards by 24 rows. So you get, I think, basically 16 colors.
Mm-hmm.
40 by 24 alphanumerics, 16 programmable colors, 8 sprites per scan line, fine pixel horizontal and vertical scrolling, single data bus allowing graphics, ROM, RAM shortage on cartridges, 4K word, 16-bit DRAM, 5-channel sound with improved frequency range, and an integrated IntelliVoice. I'm so sorry. That is very difficult to say. However, this was in 1982.
Right.
At the end of 1982, we experienced what has been referred to affectionately as the video game crash. According to the company's 1982 Form 10K, Mattel had almost 20% of the domestic video game market. So Atari had something like 70. Intellivision had something like 20, and ColecoVision had, I want to say 10%, and the rest of it was nominal. It was less than 1% divided up between older consoles and your Fairchild F1, which was the first cartridge-based system, which was still out there and being produced in very small numbers. I had a Fairchild. We will talk about Fairchild because it was owned and operated by this one guy who was a genius. He figured it all out on his own, and I think some people kind of ripped him off. But we will talk about Fairchild eventually. I've got there's a documentary made by his daughter and son-in-law, and they're teaching their children how to play them, the F1s. Sorry, circling back. So Mattel Electronics provide 25% of revenue and 50% of operating income in the fiscal year of 1982. Now, although the Atari 2600 had more third-party developers, Creative Computing Video and Arcade Games reports after visiting the summer 1982 Consumer Electronics Show that the momentum is tremendous. Activision and iMagic began releasing games for the Intellivision, as did hardware rival Coleco. Mattel created M-Network branded games for Atari systems. So Intellivision was even designing games for the Atari. The company's advertisement budget.
I remember I had cartridges that were from Intellivision and Coleco for the Atari.
Yeah. Their advertising budget increased to over $20 million for that year. In its October 1982 stockholders report, Mattel announced that Electronics had so far this year posted a nearly $100 million profit and nearly 500 million sales, a threefold increase over October of 1981.
Wow.
However, that same report predicted a loss for the upcoming quarter. Hiring still continued, as did the company's optimism that the investment in software and hardware development would pay off. The M-Network brand expanded to personal computers. An office in Taiwan is open to handle Apple II programming. So they were even designing stuff for Apple II. The original 5-person Mattel game development team had grown to 110 people. And the director, Baum, was upgraded to vice president, senior VP. Daglow led Intellivision development, and top engineer Minkoff directed all work and all the other platforms while they were working on their own game companies. So, but in February of '83, Mattel Electronics opened an office in the south of France to provide European input to Intellivision games and develop games for the ColecoVision. At its peak, Mattel Electronics employed 1,800 people. That's not the Koi company. That's just the electronics division.
Right.
Now, amid the flurry of new hardware and software developments, there was trouble for Intellivision. ColecoVision and the Atari 5200, both released in late '82 for their Christmas season, took advantage of falling RAM prices to offer graphics closer to arcade quality. In '83, the price of home computers, particularly the Commie 64, came down drastically to compete with video game system sales. The market became flooded with hardware and software, and retailers were ill-equipped to cope. In the spring of 1983, hiring at Mattel Electronics came to a halt. This is the video game crash. The price of Intellivision 2, which launched at $150 earlier that year, was lowered to $69.
Wow.
Mattel Electronics was able to be a software company. However, by October '83, electronics losses were over $280 million for the year, and 1/3 of the programming staff was laid off. Another third were gone by November, and on January 20th, 1984, the remaining programming staff were laid off. The Taiwan and French offices continued a little while longer due to contract and legal obligations. On February 4th, 1984, Mattel sold the Intellivision business for $20 million to plus 750,000 Intellivision master components to INTV, which was INTV was formed by a vice president at Mattel, Valesky. He bought all of the other investors and changed the name to the INTV Corporation. And he's the one that continued selling the Intellivisions, the software, the other things up until 1990. In France, the office had investors from Nice Ideas, and they continued to work on Intellivision, ColecoVision, and other computer games. They produced World Cup soccer and championship tennis for multiple platforms. Now, in 1985, INTV Corporation introduced the INTV System 3, also branded the Intellivision Super Pro system, using the same design as the original Intellivision model, but in black and silver. So usually when you see people with Intellivisions, this is actually what they have, because they were released, again, up until 1990. So the electronics was a little newer. But they eventually had trouble. They did enter into a licensing agreement with Nintendo and Sega, which required INTV corporations to discontinue Intellivision in 1990. But they did publish 21 new Intellivision cartridges, bringing the Intellivision library to a total of 124 cartridges plus one compilation cartridge. And then they started writing software for Nintendo and Sega. Now in 1989, INTV Corp and World Book Encyclopedia entered into agreement to manufacture an educational video game system called TutorVision, but it's basically an Intellivision. You could run Intellivision cartridges off of it.
But it was for education.
Yeah, education. Yeah, that's how they got around the deal they made with Atari Nintendo and Sega. An unknown number of these TutorVisions and Intellivision Super Pro systems were set because they didn't keep really good numbers. A subset of these units contain the full Tutorvision exec and could play Tutorvision games. Intellivision games became readily available again when Keith Robinson and Stephen Roney, both former Intellivision programmers at Mattel, obtained exclusive rights to the Intellivision and games in 1997. In that year, they formed a new company, Intellivision Productions, and made Intellivision for PCs Volume 1. It was available as a free download, and Intellivision games could then be played on modern computers for the first time by running emulators. They sent them out as Windows and Macintosh as well. Intellivision Production released Intellivision Lives and Intellivision Rocks on CDs. And Intellivision Rocks included Intellivision games made by Activision and iMagic, they were provided documentation, PC compatible cross assemblers, and the Magus 2 PC and television cartridge interface. Unfortunately, the project was canceled, but they did provide copies of Your Friend the Exec, the Programmer's Guide to the Intellivision Executive Control Software. But by 2000, Intellivision hobbyists ultimately created their own development tools, including Intellivision memory cartridges. In 2005, Intellivision Products announced the new Intellivision cartridges were to be produced, which was a pool game. Deep Pockets and Super Pro Pool and Billiards was programmed for the old INTV systems. Now, in 1999, Activision released a collection of Intellivision classic games for PlayStation. And Intellivision released some more for Xbox, Xbox Live. And then in 2014, At Games purchased the rights to produce the Intellivision Flashback. So under licensing from Intellivision Products, released the Intellivision Flashback classic game console. It's a miniaturized size Intellivision console with two original size Intellivision controllers. While adapters have been available to interface original Intellivision controllers to personal computers, the Intellivision Flashback included two new Intellivision controllers, identical in layout and function to the originals. It comes with 60 games preloaded. If you bought it from Dollar General, it came with 61. They were fairly cheap, and you can still go out and buy them. They got them on eBay. It's a lot like the Atari flashbacks, the early ones. I have one of the Atari flashbacks. It doesn't work very well. The controls are kind of bunk. They're not real well made. Now, when Atari took over making the flashbacks, those are pretty good. So somebody saw these flashback units in like a dollar store and thought, you know what, I could do this pretty well. And then they found out that Atari had started releasing the Atari flashbacks. And it was Tommy Tallarico. He announced that he'd acquired the rights to the Intellivision branded games with plans to launch a new home video game console. A new company, Intellivision Entertainment, was formed by Tallarico serving as president. Tommy Tallarico writes video game music. That's his big claim to fame. So he's actually in the industry. And they renamed the productions Sky Rangers Inc., which is the original name of the programmers.
Blue Sky Rangers.
Yeah. All the ones that went on and started Activision.
Right.
Their video game intellectual property had been transferred to Intellivision Entertainment. At the Portland Retro Gaming Expo in October 2018, the Intellivision Amico was officially revealed. So this is from Amico's website. We strive for simplicity in everything we create, from our easy touchscreen, disc, and motion controls to our effortless menus and games for all skill levels. An Amico system with 2 controllers and 6 installed games will retail for around $249 at launch. All additional games will be priced between $4.99 and $9.99 at launch. They're all downloadable. So there's no physical media, so it's cheaper to release them.
Mm-hmm.
Through our free Android and iOS app. Mobile devices can be connected to Amico for up to 8 total players. Every game on Amico encourages group participation and teamwork through couch co-op style gameplay, while also offering single player modes. They are committed, I'm quoting the website. We are committed to offering products that parents feel confident about. All of our games have no graphic, violence, blood, bad language, or sexual content are rated E or E10+. We also offer easy-to-use positive reinforcement parental controls. We want Amico to be who you turn to on family game night. We offer a diverse, curated library of original titles, retro, party, educational, and table games, so everyone can join in. We also utilize our unique controllers and interactive lighting to create a gaming experience you can't get anywhere else. Amico comes with 6 premium preloaded games, which additional games ranging from $4.99 to $9.99 at launch. The gameplay adapts to your skill level. No ads, paid downloadable content, loot boxes, or in-game purchases. Extensive game libraries ranging from sports and recreational, educational brain games, party games, and retro classics to your favorite table games. There's truly something for everyone. So each console will come with 6 pre-installed games, including Intellivision Skiing, Cornhole, Farkle, Astro Smash, Shark, and one as yet unannounced title. The console is based on an 8-core, 1.8 gigahertz Qualcomm Snapdragon 624 system on a chip with an Adreno 506 GPU. The system supports Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, RFID, HDMI out, and a micro SD card slot. A charging cradle for 2 Amico controllers on the top, and passive cooling, and 1 USB-C port on the back for accessories and expansions. The body also features a built-in LED ambient lighting system with 40 independently controlled LEDs. The console will launch with 5 available colors: Glacier White, Graphite Black, Vintage Wood Grain, Galaxy Purple, and GTO Red. The system has 32 gigs of internal memory storage and utilizes a custom Android Linux operating systems. Now, the games that you will be able to get. 10-Yard Fight, ACL Cornhole, Archon, which I thought might be.
I remember Archon.
Yeah.
I played both Archon and Archon 2.
Yeah, Archon was badass. Asteroids, Astro Smash, B-17 Bomber, Backtalk Party, Bad Dudes, Baseball, Beauty and the Beast, Biplanes, Blank Slate, Bomb Squad, Bowling, Boxing, Brain Duel, Breakout, Bump and Jump, Caveman Ninja, Care Bears, Care Carts. I'm assuming that's to compete with Mario Kart. Cloudy Mountain, Darts, Demon Attack. You might like that one. Dolphin Quest, Dracula, Dragonfire, Dino Blaster, Earthworm Jim 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Emoji characters, Evil Knievel, Farkle, Finnegan Fox, Flying Tigers, Frog Bog, Hot Wheels Colossal Crash, Horse Racing, Ice Trek, Ink and Gold Diamond, Jungle Hunt, Kung Fu Masters, Liar's Dance, Load Runner, Math Fun,
loved Load Runner.
Yo, yeah. Miner 2049er, and Missile Command. So yeah, some old ones.
Wish it came with Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I didn't see the Dungeons and Dragons in there, but that's not to say they don't have it. There's some other ones too. Moon Patrol, Night Stalker, Pong, R-Type, Shark Skiing.
R-Type.
Yeah, Spelunker, Super Burger Time, Telestrations, Spades, Toe Jam and Earl, Tron Deadly Discs.
Cool.
Utopia, Warlords, and Yar's Revenge.
Yeah, Yar's Revenge was on the Atari.
Yeah. So the problem with this Amico is it looks like it may not come out.
No.
Well, okay, so they said the same thing about the new Atari VCS, and it's been out about a year.
Right.
And they said the same thing about the Poly Mega, and it's been out about a year. This Amico project started a few years after them. So until they say it's finally dead, I don't know. But pre-orders were opened in April of 2020, and Intellivision Entertainment revealed that it had sold over 10,000 pre-orders for its VIP edition console.
Mm-hmm.
It was priced at $249 for the black and white versions and $279 for the wood grain versions. I've included some pictures of those. The console received a further $5.5 million from a campaign on a crowdfunding site called Fig. An October 2020 release date was announced. Tallarico noted the company had stopped taking retail purchase orders because of supply chain issues caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and had to make development kits by hand in California instead of the planned manufacturing in China. Customers were required to place a refundable $100 deposit in order to reserve the console. So in May of 2020, it was announced former Microsoft exec and Xbox co-founder Jay Allard had joined the Intellivision entertainment team to serve as the company's global managing director, assisting with the company in launching the Amico. But he left a month later and said the role was not a good fit. Despite this, Tallarico noted that hiring of Allard during an investment call in March 2021, even though Allard had already left, this led to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission to send a letter for clarification to Intelligence Entertainment to clarify when Allard had left the company. The console was delayed in August 2020 and a new release date of April 2021 because of issues caused by the chip shortage, which we are all familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
But in February 2021, Tallarico announced a further delay to October 10th, 2021, because of continued supply chain issues. And in 2021, it was revealed that Intellivision Entertainment had hired a number of the original creators of the Intellivision to remake their games for the new console. At an appearance at E3 2021, Tallarico announced a number of the games that would be coming to the console and noted that although the pandemic had formed or had forced a delay in the console's launch, it also gave the company a chance to increase the amount of games available for it. The presentation showcased games that were already available as free web games, like a series of Sesame Street education games. So in November of 2021, it was revealed that Amico's game Tank Battle featured assets that were taken from the game World of Tanks and other third-party sources. But a build of the console's operating system was released at the end of 2021. In February of 2022, Tallarico stepped down from his role as CEO of Intellivision, remaining on board as the company's president and largest shareholders. He was replaced by the company's former chief revenue officer, Phil Adam. In a statement provided to IGN, the company said the management shift was to better align its resources to face the new challenges of commencing production for the Amico. The same month, Intellivision began its fourth round of fundraising, acknowledged that the company had zero revenue since 2018. Now, beyond July 2022, a proposed total of $10 million would allow for 7 to 9 months operation that was planned to run for 3 months. Intellivision Entertainment closed 3 weeks after its commencement. A total of $58,001 from 54 investors was raised. Makovich said the Intellivision's decision to close the campaign early was as bright a red flag as it gets in the world of unreleased tech hardware. In April 2022, some pre-orders for the Amico were canceled, including some orders via GameStop. In June, Intellivision cut staff and licensed IP, both aimed at keeping the project viable, with the company stalling that it still aims to launch the console. So the Amico is up in the air. There's a lot of guys on those YouTube channels saying it's never going to come out. But I also have an unboxing video linked showing one of the designers actually playing it, unboxing it and playing it. So they have them. They're just having trouble getting them into people's hands. Assuming the unboxing video was faked. But I did have some reviews and stuff on it. I think some people have gotten some in their hands to play with. But again, they said the same thing about the Atari VCS. They said the same thing about the Polymega. Both of those consoles are out and running and are doing fine. You could go out and buy them without a lot of hassle, even during a chip shortage, which we're still in.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's better. It's better, but we are still in a chip shortage. So I don't know. I've got some pictures of the Amico. It is a beautiful design. It kind of takes from the Nintendo Wii a little bit. But it also kind of takes from the old Intellivision design. If you go out there, take a look at it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But it's a beautiful unit. It's small. It looks nice. It seems to me that video game console people are starting to design these things more like furniture, like they did back in the 70s, if that makes sense. Like, this is supposed to be out and looked at, not just some piece of hardware you keep behind a door.
Well, and it's funny that they're bringing all these out because, I mean, you're talking about 50-year-old game consoles and they're bringing them back retro and everything like that. And I think that's really, really cool. I had so much fun with the Atari, the Intellivision when I got to play it, and the ColecoVision. It's just really kind of cool to see these things come back.
Oh, yeah. Oh, most definitely. I'll say this, though, between you, me, and our listeners, our few listeners, our thousands of listeners, I like the Coleco better.
Yeah, the Coleco had the best graphics.
Yeah, but their controller was not great.
No, it had the little small joystick on it, and it was not. But the graphics on the ColecoVision were by far superior to both Atari and Intellivision.
Definitely. Well, thank you for going down that little trip down memory lane with me.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking me down that down that memory path. Awesome. appreciate all that.
Sure.
So with that, then we'll go over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For my information today, I got everything from the Crime Sheet, CBS 19 News Charlottesville, NBC 12 News Richmond, and It's Crime O'Clock Somewhere. And this is the story of Sage Smith.
Sage Smith.
So Sage had grown into a confident young woman at 19 years old. She was the first in her family to graduate from high school and the first to escape her complex childhood. Sage was working at a local hair salon with aspirations of becoming a professional hairdresser, and she was taking classes at local cosmetology school in order to make her dreams a reality. She was living life as her fully authentic self. She was openly discussing her transgender identity and embracing her newfound femininity. Until that is one cold night in December when Sage disappeared, and nearly a decade later, Sage is presumed dead. Had her roommates know that she was going to be out on the town in Charlottesville, Virginia? Was Sage going to meet someone with ill intentions? Could her disappearance be an accident, or was it foul play? But before diving into what happened to Sage the night she disappeared and the subsequent search, it's important to understand who Sage was. Sage was born Dashad LaQuinn Smith, and Sage grew up in an area of Charlottesville experiencing extreme poverty. At the age of 3, Sage was being raised by her grandmother, Miss Cookie, who had been a dedicated parent and prominent community advocate. Sage was described as energetic, outgoing, and colorful. Life wasn't always easy for the family. When Sage was a preteen, a large wrought iron fence was installed in the Garrett Square housing complex, which family made the neighborhood feel more like a prison. Shortly after, Miss Cookie and the family moved to another neighborhood where Sage met Shakira Washington, who would eventually become one of Sage's dearest friends. One day, Sage, who was still identifying as Dashad, came to Miss Cookie and said there was something on her mind that she wanted to confess, and asked her not to be upset. And she said, "Grandma, I'm gay." And Miss Cookie said, "You aren't telling me anything that I don't already know." As Sage grew older, she realized the label of gay man didn't fully encompass how she felt. And so eventually she came out as a transgender woman and began to go by Sage. Sage struggled in school, but ultimately became the first in her family to graduate from high school, as I said before. After being in foster care when Miss Cookie returned Sage to her mother, who was subsequently deemed unfit at the time, the department paid for Sage to move out to her own apartment. With her newfound freedom, Sage was braiding others' hair from her place while taking cosmetology classes and sweeping hair at a local salon. Sage's childhood friends, Shakira and Aubrey Carson, moved in with her to share the space. The group enjoyed going out and having a good time. They frequented parties that secretly catered to men and would often invite men and friends over to their shared apartment on Harris Street, dubbed the Dollhouse Mansion because of its painted pink walls. Sometimes the friends would hook up with people for fun, sometimes for money, but they were always safe and kept one another in a loop about their activities, texting one another updates as the night went on. Journalist Emma Eisenberg details how one time Shakira recalls that a local UVA professor arranged for her to come over to his house. When the man briefly left the room, Shakira heard a soft knock on the window. When she looked, it was Sage lurking outside the bushes, watching to make sure that the situation was sound. While Sage was open about her transgender identity at the time, it wasn't until the beginning of November that she took to social media. On November 9th, 2012, 11 days before she disappeared, Sage changed her gender on Facebook to show as female. Quote, "I am a girl, now respect it," a message she said to a friend. And then on November 18th, she posted a message directed at a family member saying, quote, "Look, I am transitioning and I am your niece." Journalist Emma Eisenberg found messages on Sage's Facebook page from March of 2012 where someone had told her to watch her back because people on the street had unfinished business with her, mainly because Sage had contacted with the wife of a man she had hooked up with. Sage also reportedly placed casual encounters ads on Craigslist, a practice that many of her friends were very wary of. These casual encounter ads are how the police believe Sage met Eric McFadden. The day Sage disappeared began almost like any other. In the morning, she spoke with her father over the phone, congratulating him on his anniversary of being released from jail. Sometime during their conversation, she asked him for money. And in recounts of the conversation, the content differs on what exactly the money was for, whether it was to get her hair braided or go towards a new TV for her apartment. Regardless of what the money was for, everyone agrees that Sage was in a great mood. She was excited about Thanksgiving the next day, where she planned to travel and surprise her stepsisters. Sage also expressed that she was looking forward to seeing her mother's new house. So, to me, this really indicates Sage had full intentions of being with her family the following day. The fact that she disappeared on the evening of November 20th is no accident.
No, I think you're right. It sounds like it is distinctly possible that she was getting money for a TV and getting her hair braided.
Possible.
Yeah. So, hey, I'll give you some money. You come over to Thanksgiving when you sit down and eat. Let me see you, Yeah, that's not something that you miss,
Well, and not a sign that somebody just up and disappears.
No. If she'd have disappeared the day after, that I could understand.
Well, depending on if something happened, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, what I mean, yeah, you don't pick up your life. You don't pick up your life and leave your entire life behind the day before a big family holiday.
If everything's going well with family, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we're on the same page here.
Yep. Well, around 5:00 p.m. that evening, Sage was at home getting ready for a date with the man Eric McFadden, whom she reportedly met up with before. Sage wasn't wearing anything special, just a black jacket, dark gray sweatpants, a black scarf, and gray and black rain boots. Around 5:40, Sage woke up Aubrey, who was taking a nap in the living room. They had a short conversation where Sage let her know that she was heading out for a bit to meet a man, but that she'd be back later on in the evening. But when Aubrey woke up from his nap again around 8 p.m. that night, he said the house was dark and quiet, which he found odd, believing Sage would have been home by then. He called Sage's phone, but it repeatedly went to voicemail. Aubrey told reporter Emma Eisenberg that was a major red flag. Sage would charge her phone anywhere. In the morning, Sage had still not returned home, and alarm bells were being sounded. Sage's biological parents both confirmed that it was extremely out of character for her phone to go straight to voicemail, and for her to have zero contact with her friends and family for over 24 hours was very rare. Aubrey knew she had to call the authorities to help. She called the Charlottesville Police Department on the afternoon of Wednesday, November 21st, and he said that the officer on the line sounded calm, simply asked for Sage's name, birth date, and a picture, nothing more. Investigators eventually subpoenaed her cell phone records and talked to witnesses to piece together that evening. And then the rest of Sage's family also learned that Sage was missing. In fact, Sage's sisters found out through a Facebook post before their mom, Latasha, could even tell them. According to Charlottesville Police Department, Sage was seen going from her apartment and walking down 4th Street Northwest near the 400 and 500 block of West Main Street. The last phone call that Sage had made before she disappeared was to an out-of-state number that the family didn't recognize. Later investigation discovered that she was going to Wild Wings Cafe right next to the Amtrak train station, but that cafe is no longer in business. They said, quote, "It's an active investigation. It's not cold or anything like that, so we have dedicated resources to the case so it could be worked full-time. Right now, we're hoping for the public's help, and there are other law enforcement tools to try and find him, which we are going to explore," said Detective Wright Settle. 6 CPD officers conducted a grid search of the area on November 24th after Sage was reported missing. They checked everything from trash cans, dumpsters, open lots and parking lots, and even fields from the University of Virginia campus for any sign of Sage. Unfortunately, when asking nearby businesses for any surveillance footage, the only camera was a traffic camera, which only monitors, it doesn't record. Investigators also traveled to the local landfill using personnel from the forensic and hazmat teams, 2 police dogs, and a retired agent with knowledge of landfill searches, but their searches came up empty. Fortunately, a few days after Sage disappeared, a lead in the case came with the help from others on Facebook and do-it-yourself detective work. Sage's family quickly took matters in their own hands and began doing their own searching, handing out flyers and looking for witnesses to interview in Sage's case. In fact, the police only knew who Eric McFadden was because Sage's family posted his phone number onto Facebook seeking information about the public. An acquaintance of Sage's named Yami Ortiz, a trans woman who socialized in similar circles, recognized his number and tied him to the case. According to Yami, Sage and Eric were dating, but Eric was not yet open about his sexuality, being a man dating a trans woman. However, Eric was reportedly in a relationship with another woman named Esther Iveni, who reportedly paid Sage money in the past to keep the relationship a secret. Ultimately, it was Sage's father, Dean, who learned that Eric worked at a Sherwin-Williams paint store and lived in downtown Charlottesville with his girlfriend. Dean also posted Eric's picture to Facebook to drum up leads. After Dean posted Eric's photo, Yami went to the police department to share with detectives everything they knew about Eric. Once the police followed up and contacted the Sherwin-Williams location, they discovered Eric had not shown up for work in 3 days. Eric did call Esther on November 25th and told her he was in Washington, D.C., and that he needed to be sent money. Esther responded saying the police were looking for him, and so she passed along the investigators' information to him. 2 days later, Eric called again, but this time he was in New York City. He tried explaining to Esther that he didn't leave the Charlottesville area because of Sage. Instead, he confirmed that he did have a relationship with Sage, and the two were meeting in front of the Amtrak station, but Eric says Sage never showed. Eric made an attempt to come back to Charlottesville, emailing Esther 30 minutes before he was scheduled to board a bus back south, saying he had changed his mind. And on December 3rd, police had the last known contact with Eric McFadden. Also on December 3rd, the police received information that Sage's credit card had been used. The credit card had been used at a convenience store. When police looked at surveillance footage, they were shocked at who they discovered was using it. The person using the card was Aubrey, Sage's friend and roommate.
What?
So Aubrey's explanation was that she and Sage were really close and would often use each other's stuff. Aubrey said she just used the card to buy groceries. Sage and Aubrey's other roommate, Shakira, said Sage's family thought it would be really bizarre for her to do that. However, police didn't have any other evidence to believe that Aubrey was involved. Eric sent Esther an email describing a new sequence of events the night Sage went missing. He said, according to the email, that while Sage was walking down the street to meet him, she was approached by a group of people. He wrote that Sage had enemies and he was scared, so he walked away before anything could happen. Eric signed the email saying that he was sorry and that he was heading west. Police heard their own internal bells over this statement, seeing that it had changed from what he had originally shared, shooting him up to the top of the suspect list. But to this day, Eric is still considered a missing person. According to investigators, they have information that states he may be in the following cities: Baltimore, Joppatown, Maryland, Atlanta, Lake City, South Carolina, New York, Rochester, and a variety of other areas along the West Coast. In short, Eric could be anywhere.
Yeah. Let's see. It's anywhere between Baltimore and let's say Boston.
And
That's a lot of people.
And the West Coast.
Millions.
Well, and the West Coast.
Oh, and the West Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is where most of the people in the country live.
Uh-huh. Well, even still, on the second anniversary of Sage's disappearance, the police said Eric most likely couldn't have committed the crime, seeing as he didn't own a car and that he lived in a heavily populated area.
Mm-hmm.
Her friends and family talk about her like an urban legend, someone with enough spontaneity and personality that made others act like moths to her flame. After Sage went missing, many took to social media to share their stories about her tenacity, like how she did a Vogue-style photo shoot with a UVA student while on a public transit bus. Others shared how she once helped an old man carrying his groceries, all wearing 3-inch heels and a miniskirt. Even though social media was initially buzzing, it took some time before police and local media caught up, sometimes always being a few steps behind. Sage's mom, Latasha, said it took a long time. It was a while before it was actually on the news. Initially, it didn't feel like a full involvement from the police, Sage's sister, Emma Langston, shared with ABC News. Unfortunately, initial interaction and investigation of the case is most crucial during the first few days and weeks. In America, missing African Americans are disproportionately reported compared to any other race, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Yeah.
In 2018, 30% of missing juveniles were African American, despite making up 13.4% of the total population. What's worse, only about a fifth of those cases are followed by the news, according to ABC News. Natalie Wilson, co-founder of the Maryland-based Black and Missing Foundation, who worked with the Smith family, spoke with journalist Eben Eisenberg and said police more often classify minority children as runaways rather than victims of crimes, yet the reverse is true for white children. Despite Sage's magnetism and the countless people who loved her, her friends and family say her missing case wasn't afforded the same attention as others were, specifically another local case. Less than 2 years after Sage disappeared, another local girl from the University of Virginia, Hannah Graham, 18, also vanished from Charlottesville. Instead of the slow police and media response that Sage's case had received, journalists and primetime news station covered Hannah's disappearance day and night. Sage's sister, Rasha, was working at a downtown Charlottesville ice cream shop in 2014 when Hannah went missing, and she recounted the droves of people looking for Hannah in those weeks, many of them coming into the store to ask for surveillance tapes or information. While Rasha never wanted anything but peace for Hannah's family, she shared with ABC News that it was a double-edged sword, wishing that the same public outcry and fierce energy was also for her sister.
Mm-hmm.
Hannah Graham's story came to a tragic ending when her remains were discovered 5 weeks later. Her killer, Jesse Matthew, pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life imprisonment, according to CBS News. In the years since Sage's disappearance, her family has continued to struggle to hold the attention of media and law enforcement. When the first ever Black police chief, Al Thomas Jr., was appointed a few years later, he met with the Smith family in 2016 and seemed like he'd be a newfound advocate. Eventually, future inquiries and communication went unanswered to a point where a petition was created and a protest staged outside the CPD headquarters because support slipped away.
Mm.
Every round of new investigators blame the old for lack of involvement, and they say the FBI will be brought in only if and when they are needed. While law enforcement takes an unofficial vow of silence, the Smith family continues to scream from the rooftops. Iana told ABC News, "It really hurts knowing Sage never got a chance to blossom into the person he was going to be. We are waiting around with an open wound in our heart right now, and every day we don't have closure. We don't have answers." Sage's father, Dean, spoke during a 2017 vigil, telling the crowd that he hasn't changed his phone number since she disappeared, despite changing it frequently before. He said, "This breaks my heart, knowing that one day Sage will call a familiar number, just as she had the morning before she vanished." Iana concluded her ABC News interview pleading, "We need help. We need people to come forward. We need the truth." Hopefully the Smith family continues to get the media coverage that their case deserves, because it just doesn't seem like it does. It's possible that the years have gone on, local chatter could help law enforcement into the right direction. Whether there's a rumor someone heard a few years later or a comment they never shared publicly before, anything could drum up more information. In the same breath, I'd really like to hear updates from the McFadden family. Have they heard anything?
Yeah. Okay, so assuming that this guy didn't do anything, if that's the case, then we have two missing people.
Well, right. I mean, if Eric chose to essentially run away because of his potential involvement in the case, it'd be my guess that over the years he'd have some sort of communication with his family.
Yeah.
Even the most sophisticated criminals slip up, and for Eric, it could be as simple as calling a house from a payphone, which could be traced to a location, a withdrawal from a bank account years later that would have gone unnoticed, or activity on one of his social media pages. Overall, it wouldn't hurt investigators to retrace old steps using new technology and re-interview family of persons of interest, known and unknown to the public. There's currently a $20,000 reward being offered for information that may lead to Sage's remains or an arrest in her case. If you have any information on what happened to Sage or the whereabouts of Eric McFadden, please call Crime Stoppers at 434-977-4000. Eric McFadden was last seen in Charlottesville, Virginia on November 23rd, 2012. He was 21 years old. Police do believe him to be the last person to have contact with Sage. In June 2019, the Charlottesville Police Department filed a missing persons report for Eric at the request of his mother. Again, they believe Eric could be in several cities along the West Coast or in cities such as Baltimore, Joppatown, Lake City, South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, and New York City. And detectives have checked many leads in these cities, but had no significant developments. At the time of his disappearance, Eric stood between 5'10" and 6'1" and weighed approximately 180 to 190 pounds. He has black hair and brown eyes. And that, unfortunately, is the tale of the disappearance of Sage Smith.
That's awful. Well, I mean, thank you for giving me the information.
Right.
That is a terrible, terrible story. Not to know. That's got to drive those people crazy for 10 years.
Well, and that's what I've talked about. People that just up and go missing, and there's no evidence, there's no trace. She was obviously very, very involved on social media. It's just hard to fathom that somebody can just up and disappear. Mm-hmm. Absolutely hard to fathom.
Yeah, it's not 1900, where that was possible.
No, we've got CCTV everywhere. Mm-hmm. Somebody, if she's alive, somebody that was as active as she was on social media, surely would have been in contact with somebody by now. So the sad, unfortunate truth is she is most likely not alive. Yeah. And I hate to say that, but I really think that's probably the case.
Yeah, I think you are correct, sir. That's a shame.
But hopefully they can find Eric McFadden at some point, and I don't know, maybe he can provide some answers. Yeah. So,
well, thank you, sir.
Well, thanks for taking the journey with me as always. That'll take us to the end of our recording week. So as a reminder, you can find our webpage at nerderymurdy.com. There you can find pictures and links to this episode. If you wish to research more on your own, please do go there. You can also find our contact information, so you can contact us. Let us know things you want to hear, things you don't want to hear, subjects that you may want us to cover. Please do let us know there, because we will take those into consideration and we will get to them at some point.
Yeah. Hey, we'll even do a short segment on birdery.
Apparently, we will do a short section on birdery, but I think I'll be out if we do that again. You can also find the link to our merchandise. So if you wish to show off your Nerdery and Murdery fandom, please do go there and check out what we have to offer. You can also find the link to our Patreon, where if you wish to donate to our show to help keep us going, help us with our costs, I promise you it does not go to put gas in Ziggy's Lamborghini.
No.
We do have upkeep that for this show, and so it really helps us.
Yes.
With your patronage. You do get episodes early, plus you get exclusive episodes where we do provide information from on our webpage, but the actual show itself is only available to our patrons.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Last but not least, please remember to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us, helps others find our content that may be looking for the type of content we provide. So take a minute. It's completely free, something you can do. It takes very, very little time. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.